Everyone, we're having a look at theme 2, writing and city life. And this theme is all about the Mesopotamian civilization. In the last lesson, we had a look at the geographical location, language, we also had a look at urbanism and the factors which constitute urbanism, or the main features of urbanism, that were food production, trade, manufacturing of goods, services, division of labor, specialization of work, and transport. Let's move ahead with the chapter and have a look at urbanization in Mesopotamia. Earliest cities in Mesopotamia date back to 3500 BCE. Bronze was an important metal. We see carpentry, drilling beads, drilling of beads. We see carving of stone steels and cutting of shells and making of weapons. In southern Mesopotamia, settlements developed around temples and centers of trade, and there were also imperial cities. So in this chapter, we're going to basically be looking at two places. One would be a city which developed around a temple, and the other would be a city which was a center of trade as well as an imperial town. In India also, we had such cities, much later, of course, not early as 3500 BCE, 3500 BC, but then in India much later. Especially in the south, you will have cities which will come up around temples, and even cities which will come up around trading centers, especially the one on the coastal areas. Let's have a look at this specialization of work, an example. This is the Varka head. So basically, this woman's head was sculpted in white marble at Uruk before 3000 BCE. That is a very, very long time ago. The eyes and eyebrows would probably have taken lapis lazuli, which is actually a semi-precious stone, which is blue in color. See, have a look at the face. First, look at the way it's been sculpted. It's something, you can still make it out to be a face, right? Today also, and this is a woman's face. Have a look that the eyebrows have a groove in them actually. So probably, and the eyes as well, right? There are holes and grooves in it. So probably that is where lapis lazuli would fit. And with the shell white and bitumen black inlays. There is also a groove along the top of the head, and perhaps for an ornament. A groove, if you have a look at the head, in the middle you'll probably see a groove kind of a thing. That's probably to put an ornament in. This is a world famous piece of sculpture admired for the delicate modeling of the woman's mouth, chin and cheeks. Have a look at it. Look at the lips, look at the chin, look at the cheekbones. Today, if someone makes a sculpture like this, it's understood because we have the tools and expertise, but something so old, made so well, is something very precious. It was modeled in a hard stone that would have been imported from a distance. So the fact that someone made a sculpture like this meant that there was specialization of craft. Someone who excelled in making such sculptures also made the Varka head. Today we're just going to have a look at one example of one town, a case study. Also, when you have a look at my notes, you may notice that they're written in a slightly different manner compared to the textbook. Well, that's because in the textbook certain things are in chunks here and there, and I'll just put it all together for you all. Some important gods were, there was Moon, god of Ur, and there was Inanna, who was the goddess of love and war. Temples were made of unbaked bricks. They grew larger over time with several rooms around open courtyards. So this is very interesting. Look at these temples. They're actually like houses. They are built around open courtyards with several rooms. The outer walls went in and out at regular intervals, unlike any other building. Which means there's not a proper boundary, square or rectangular shaped boundary wall actually. Gods were offered grain, curd, and fish. Very interestingly, they offered the things that are present there. So grain, of course, grain and curd are things which we offer gods today also. But fish is a very interesting choice. It's because this civilization depended on the river. And one source of food very easily available from the river is fish. So next time, if someone of a certain faith eats something or believes that it's okay, to eat any sort of thing, you do not need to judge, because different cultures have different types of food habits, and it's really that simple. You just need to understand that. Gradually, oil pressing, grain grinding, spinning and weaving were done in the temples. Now see, today if you go to a temple, you'd only see the praying happening to the god. But here, temples are like centers of activity. You have oil pressing, you have grain grinding. Oil pressing is basically taking out oil from seeds. Grains were grinded, spinning and weaving, all these kinds of things were done. There were written records of distributions and allotment of grain, plough animals, bread, beer, fish, etc. Now, the temple also had transactions of all these things that were given to people. Agriculture was a man-made hazard, as channels divested water from Euphrates so much that people upstream had abundance and the village downstream suffered. Now, one sad part was, although Mesopotamian civilization was flanked by rivers, we see people who had developed agriculture more. They started making dams or making banks across the river and diverting water to their fields and to their city instead of letting it go to other places. Temples were also used for accounting of what went in and out, that is wealth after a loot. So this sort of work usually happens in a country. It would happen at the office, right, where you see how much of money the country has. If I say in a kingdom, something like this would be done by the treasurer of the king. But here it's being done in a temple. Well, it's being done in a temple because a temple was a place where everyone would come. So it was not just worshipping of God there, but because God was being worshipped there, it was a place people would protect, people would come to visit, and so on and so forth. Wars made victorious chiefs wealthy, and the wealth was used to beautify temples. Example of a temple town is Uruk. In Uruk, we find a depiction of armed horses and victims. Over time, we also realized that it grew to 250 hectares, which was twice as large as Mohenjo-daro. We'll have a look at Mohenjo-daro of the Indus Valley civilization next year in Form 12. Uruk also had a defensive wall from around 4200 BC to 400 CE. In 2800 BC, it had expanded to 400 hectares. The size of the city had increased. Agricultural tax was compulsory. Ration lists have been found. Ration lists are basically food grain lists. What's been given to what? What is being given to whom? We also find evidence of bronze tools and sculpting and brick columns. And the potter's wheel was considered to be a technological landmark here. Potter's wheel is basically the little wheel which keeps moving around and around, and through which, on which pots are designed. Thank you. Before I end this lesson, it's very important to you to remember such names. Like, example, what is name a temple town? You need to know it's Uruk. In which town do we find a defensive wall and depiction of armed horses and victims? Uruk. Gods of Mesopotamia were offered what kind of meat? Fish, those kind of things. Who was the goddess of love and war? Inanna. So these are certain things that you do need to remember. The little details matter a lot. Thank you.